It's Thursday, the 17th of October, 2024. Welcome to the Fast 5 Business News by Fear and Greed, where we give you the top 5 business stories you need to know in just 5 minutes. I'm Michael Thompson, and good morning, Sean Aylmer.
Hey, good morning, Michael.
Sean, 5 stories in 5 minutes. Let's go. Story number 1, Qantas is the airline of choice for federal politicians, with more than 90% of domestic flights for parliamentarians and their staff booked on Qantas or its subsidiary Jetstar.
That's up from 75% a decade ago, according to the Independent Parliamentary Expenses Authority. Virgin's share has gone from 22% 10 years ago to just 9%. Now, Qantas is more expensive, so it does beg the question why a disproportionate amount of travel on the national carrier. Don't really know the answer to that one. According to the Independent Parliamentary Expenses Authority guidelines, parliamentarians must ensure that flights booked provide value for money. That's probably in the eye of the beholder, but certainly there's a moral imperative to find value, I would have thought. Depends on routes and times, but in highly trafficked flights, Qantas is still chosen. Sydney, Melbourne, Brisbane flights, well, Qantas was paid more than 4 times what Virgin was paid. Last year, politicians spent $28.6 million on domestic flights. Pre-pandemic, it was about $24 million.
Sean, it's an interesting point, this idea of kind of where the government spends its money for business as usual products. What else do we know, though, about kind of the travel arrangements and the way these things are made?
Well, the Department of Finance oversees travel arrangements. There are about 20 suppliers involved. As you could imagine, the government's a good client because it pays its invoices and it pays them on time. In terms of bookings, corporate travel management, the ASX-listed group has a contract. CTM, Corporate Travel Management, also oversees the domestic accommodation program, domestic and international travel apart from Virgin and Qantas, a bunch of international airlines in that: British Airways, Cathay Pacific, Emirates, Qatar, Etihad, Singapore. The car rental company of choice, Hertz, and the travel and procurement payment services partner is National Australia Bank.
All right, let's move on to story number 2 now. Sean, the Reserve Bank's chief economist, Sarah Hunter, yesterday said the central bank was constantly alert for signs that high levels of inflation will become entrenched.
The good news is she thinks that prices are on the way back to that 2 to 3% target that the Reserve Bank wants to see. The risk is that if individuals, businesses and investors don't think they're coming back to that target, then it might become self-fulfilling and they won't arrive back. If that happens and inflation expectations are elevated, then it becomes much, much harder to get prices lower. What happens? Workers demand higher wages because they think inflation is higher. Suppliers expect more for products because they think inflation is higher. Consumers are actually willing to pay more for goods. This idea of de-anchoring inflation expectations is a real problem. It triggers volatility in the market. We don't think rates are going to move anytime soon, and that is helping anchor those inflationary expectations at the moment.
Sean, story number 3, the Commonwealth Bank held its annual general meeting yesterday in Adelaide, and boss Matt Comyn said the domestic economy remains sound.
He was pretty upbeat, though. He warned that inflation is staying higher for longer and households are finding it tough. Over the past year, the Commonwealth Bank's offered about 132,000 tailored hardship payment arrangements to customers. He was very upbeat about regional branches. He wants them to stay open. He also said, in fact, was the chair of the meeting, Paul O'Malley, talking about AI technologies, and the bank really wants to embrace AI. Mr. O'Malley said it's a valuable tool that will improve customer service and combat financial crime. He said embracing more advanced technology is one of the vital issues for the bank over the next 5 to 10 years. He also spoke about the need to support communities exposed to the transition to cleaner energy. About 30,000 customers are dependent on carbon transitioning. He also, interestingly, said that banks blocked or slowed down transactions to crypto platforms on the back of concerns about the level of scams and fraud tied to crypto products.
Story number 4, Rio Tinto is reviewing its strategy for its flagship Australian iron ore division after it shipped higher than normal volumes of low-grade material in the September quarter.
Rio shipped a weaker than expected 84.5 million tonnes of ore from Western Australia in the 3 months to September 30, and 19% of those volumes were lower grade. Now, the challenge for Rio is that it underinvested a few years back. That's coming home to bite, with the lower grade ore likely to be a higher proportion of sales, at least in the next couple of years. Next year, its Simandou Mountains project in Guinea will kick into line. That's high grade ore, but analysts are just a little bit worried about the long-term implications of low-grade ore in the next few years. Rio's share price closed down 1.5% yesterday.
Finally, Sean, story number 5. What do you make of this one? The love child of late packaging magnate Richard Pratt can challenge the billionaire family for her slice of the fortune after an attempt by her half-siblings to have the case thrown out of court failed.
Paula Hitchcock, 27, is the child of Mr. Pratt, who died in 2009, and his longtime mistress, Sherry Lee Hitchcock. Paula Hitchcock alleges she's as much a Pratt as her siblings. She alleges she is, for the purposes of the family trust, a child of both Mr. Pratt and his wife Jean, according to the Fin Review. Ms. Hitchcock has been pursuing her half-siblings in the Supreme Court of New South Wales since 2022, alleging the trust was wrongly amended back in 2001 to exclude her, and those changes should be thrown out. The siblings argue Ms. Hitchcock cannot be considered a child of their mother because she has her own mother. The Pratt fortune is worth about $27 billion, most of which is made up of the Visy packaging and recycling empire.
All right, there we go. The top 5 business stories in 5 minutes. Thank you, Sean.
Thank you, Michael.
It is Thursday, the 17th of October, 2024. Remember to hit follow on the podcast. And if 5 minutes isn't enough, you can find our longer daily show called Fear and Greed, wherever you listen to podcasts. And out every Thursday, there's a new episode of The Property Pendulum, brought to you by Fear and Greed and Domain. This week, we are looking at the lengths that some people will go to secure the keys to their next home. We are talking about bribes to agents. We're talking about sending beer and champagne and baked goods and even writing letters to the seller of a property, hoping to swing it their way. You can find The Property Pendulum wherever you listen to podcasts as well, and I'll put a link in today's show notes. I'm Michael Thompson, and that was the Fast 5 Business News by Fear and Greed. Have a great day.